then I just have to close everything out.
Says live on custom live streaming service. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, sweet. I'm just gonna close everything out and then we can get started. Okay. Hey, everybody. What's up?
Says live on custom live
Let's get this
service.
paused. Okay, what's up, everybody? It's Pete and Ash. We're back with our Never Leaving Home live tour. And tonight we have our first super special guest, Jeremy McGrath. What's up, Jeremy?
Hi, Jeremy. How's it going, man?
Yeah, we've kind of been having...
Oh, well, thanks for having me on. How are you guys?
Dude, we're great. Yeah. So we've, just for everybody at home watching, we've been kind of catching up with Jeremy for a while. And to let you guys know kind of what we're thinking of for tonight, we're going to have a little chat with Jeremy and kind of ask him our own questions and just hang out for a bit like we've already been doing. And then we'll open it up to you guys and let you join. So please, if you have questions, I'll be monitoring the live stream as we're going. Put your questions in the live chat and I'll kind of feed them into the interview. And then we'll let you join on camera. So I'll paste the Zoom meeting invite and you can just click that and come on in. So for anybody watching who doesn't know who Jeremy McGrath is, I mean, I don't know, I guess we could start by saying that his real nickname is the King of Supercross, right, Jeremy?
I didn't give myself that nickname, but yeah. That's what.
You can't choose your nicknames anyway. That's the way it goes.
Really
People give them to you.
I've actually been a man of many nicknames, but that one kind of stuck, which I'm not sad about. That was a good one.
No, it's a good one. If you can be the king of anything, that's great, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, all right, cool. I'll take that nickname. It's a good one.
Yeah. So Jeremy is 7-time Supercross Live AMA champion and overall just kind of responsible, I mean, I would say, for freestyle motocross riding. I mean, you kind of made that a thing, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny because back in the day when we started, I mean, Krusty, Steel Roots, all these Freeride movies, we've, you know, throughout our racing career on the little bits of off time that we had, we got to go out and ride in the hills and kind of ride in the dunes and ride and do all this fun stuff that was kind of undocumented for a while. And then we all started, sort of the video craze started to happen. And, you know, as weird as it is, I'm not shy now, but I was pretty shy when I was a kid. And, you know, I always kind of wanted my riding to speak for myself. So that's kind of where the knack came from, right? So in 93, this was 3 years into my, well, this was like 4 years into my pro career. 93, I moved up to the big class, the 250 class, started winning, won the championship. And then I was like, man, you know, this is really cool, but I got to like separate myself from, I got to do something different. And that's kind of, I was, you know, I raced BMX for a lot of years before I ever raced motocross. I didn't start racing motocross till I was 14, which is pretty late. And all my buddies were all BMX pros and all this stuff. And the trick, the knack came from the BMX world. And so I was like, man, I got to figure out how to do that in moto. And that's kind of where that was born. And then in 94, the beginning of the year in Orlando, I did it in practice, and my team manager Dave was at Honda was kind of like, don't ever do that again. I thought you were falling off the beat. It was pretty funny. And then, so, you know, the art of doing a trick, whether it's winning or whether you're over the finish line or whatever it was, kind of happened. Right. So, and there was some guys, like there was a guy before me that was named Gordon Ward. He was a local guy that did the heel clicker thing. And, you know, just, there was no video around. And the first guy that did the tricks was not famous. Right. So I was winning races, and then I started doing tricks, and that's kind of exactly what you're talking about. That's kind of where, you know, Mike Metzger was, you know, sort of this outlandish character that rode motocross and sort of rode freestyle free ride, it was called back then. And we videoed it, and, you know, he got on movies at times. So, you know, there was a couple of us that were pretty responsible for it, but, you know, I was always a racer for sure at heart. That's what I did. I'm a racer, but I always loved to kind of push the limits. And, you know, some say that's where freestyle came from, but it's pretty cool because it created a whole nother, sport, or maybe another
Dude, totally.
So.
It did. And you know what's crazy is that for us, like, we don't know shit about racing. Like, we know nothing. I mean, okay, so when I lived in Everett, Washington. I've been to 2 Supercross, like, in the stadium to watch, and it's pretty fucking exciting. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's great. I have an interest in it, but neither of us know anything about it. So it's really novel and exciting for us to, like, talk about. It's cool to talk about racing, but man, I was like, I hope I don't say anything really stupid while we're on here, because I don't know anything about it.
That's the great part. It's look, it's all raw, it's honest. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
sure.
racing in the 90s was really not that popular, right? Until we started getting TV and some stuff that started showing it, and then it made it more popular. And I was just lucky to be part of the 90s, and that's kind of where the major growth was. And now it's pretty famous. You probably know all the guys now in Supercross, but you guys are still involved in 2-wheel stuff.
Right.
Also, our business is really, the ADV side is really kind of up and coming. It's a lot different than the dirt bike, which is much more established. It doesn't have quite the same dollars attached to it, but it's growing. It's a really rapidly growing segment, but it doesn't have this like well-established like focal point like the races for dirt biking, and it's a little bit more like backcountry skiing or backpacking or something like that. Like, you don't have this like the Supercross of backpacking,
Right. Like adventure, it's funny because all racers, we all look at adventure and go, it'd be so fun to be able to have some time to do that, because, we're all fans of 2 motorcycles, right? So I for sure love anything that has to do with a motorcycle, whether it's adventure, whether it's Supercross, whether it's motocross, whether it's speedway, whether it's flat track, whether it's anything, it doesn't matter. 2 wheels, about it. So, it's always sparked my interest on the adventure side of things, because you always used to watch, for me, I always used to see like those Dakar bikes a long time ago. They were like, wow, those things are so crazy. They had the big fairings and all this stuff. And so, not only did I think Moto all the time and Supercross, it was always like, what else can I get involved in that's just so fun? And I've been enjoying adventure stuff lately so much. It's just, I guess, obviously as you get a little bit older, and I'm not at 48, I'm not racing or riding Supercross so much anymore. So I'm trying to, find trails and find really cool stuff and ride bigger bikes that still test my skills. So it's been fun.
Yeah, I just think it's so cool. Like, when I saw your picture on Instagram, just like regular dude out doing dual sport rides with his buddies. You're the real deal, man. Like, you just love motorcycles. It's awesome. Like,
I think, it's one of the things I always told myself when I retired from racing, I always wanted to retire early enough where I didn't hate what I was doing. And, racing these days has become so serious and so, so much like a job that, some of these guys come out of this thing and they just don't really like it. And, I have passion for all things 2 wheels. I ride tons of bicycles. That's my background. That's where I grew up, riding bikes. And Supercross just it just developed, and the Moto thing happened. And I love my motorcycle so much, and any motorcycle for that matter. But it's just one of those things that I think that people from the outside can really tell. It's easy to tell if someone's faking it, right? If they really like Moto, you're going to be able to tell. Mm-hmm. If they don't, we all know. I know when I see the racers and then they retire, I know which ones like it and which ones don't. They're sometimes mad at the sport for a while because they've, it's really kicked their butt. It's a hard sport.
I think that one of the really interesting things, about you getting into it, it's just so coming from the racing background, ADV is a little bit like this, just way out, like we're like the hippies of the motorcycle industry or something like that. So it's so interesting to have some
therapy. It's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. And I saw when I was getting online and reading your Wikipedia page and your bio and looking at some of your stuff, I was like, God, what is it about this guy that makes him such a good candidate for ADV? Like, it made him interested in ADV. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was your interest in bicycles and like some non-motorized sports. And it was interesting that one of the things in your one of your bios said that you started at 15 after a successful career in BMX. Right. And I was like, you already had a successful career in BMX at age 15. Like that's a pretty young to have already had a successful career. But and I saw some pictures of you mountain biking and stuff like that. How did you get into BMX and bike riding? Where does that come from?
You know, it's funny. BMX was a sport that I picked up like when I was a little kid. I was born in San Francisco in 71. And then in 75, we moved from San Francisco down to Southern California to a little town called Menifee. And there was nobody in Menifee. It's just like, it's kind of like near Temecula maybe, or Riverside or Paris, whatever. And really, really small town. And I had a couple of friends that rode BMX, but they were a lot older than me, right? So I'm this little kid, like maybe 7-8-year-old kid riding BMX with these kids that were like 15. And they were building jumps and building tracks and all this stuff. And that's kind of where the interest came from as a little kid. And I started racing BMX at age 9. And then kind of developed pretty quickly. Started racing all over the country. My mom and me would just pack up the bike and we'd fly all over. I was so lucky enough to be able to fly to these different nationals and race. And then I had I got decent enough where I had a team ride. And so they would take care of some expenses and some stuff like that. And, the thing about BMX back in the day, it was so popular. I mean, you could race. If you wanted to race 7 days a week, you could race 7 days a week. So we were racing probably 5 times, like 3 days from Monday to Friday at least, and then 3 times on Saturday, 3 times on Sunday. So, I mean, experience was happening super, super fast. So I was fortunate enough to, get the opportunity to do that and then ride a bunch, got good. And then, but by the time I was 14, I was fried. I was like, yeah, that was awesome. I loved it and I was good at it. But you know what? I am tired. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. And a friend of mine that raced BMX had been racing Moto. So that was where the connection happened. He's like, hey, you should come ride Moto with me. And then I had my first, I had a couple dirt bikes along the way. Just my dad and mom both rode dirt bikes as a hobby. When, they were in San Francisco, there was a place called Hollister Hills. There was kind of an OHV park, and they rode there as a kid. And I would see photos of me there on a big wheel and all this stuff. And then when we moved to Southern California, I got a mini bike, and then I got another little bike. And then my first 80 was like a 78 RM 80. And then this kid invited me to race motocross. And so for my 14th birthday, my mom and dad scrounged up enough to get me a brand new YZ80. And I rode the 80 a little bit for a couple months, and then that's when the invite happened. Then I went out and raced. And from the first time that I raced, it was on. I'm like, no more pedaling. All I got to do is
totally.
It's on.
And yeah,
so that was kind of where the love just like took off like a rocket.
But you still ride bikes a lot, right? Are you still riding bikes?
Yeah, I still ride bikes a ton. And, it's kind of funny because you like, I loved it so much. And then I went so far moto, and then we always used bicycles as training, road bikes, mountain bikes, whatever it was. Obviously it's great heart rate training. And so when I'm kind of in these stages where I'm not riding a ton these days, I can ride right out of my house. We got great mountain bike trails. And so I have a bunch of buddies that ride. So we're riding 2-3 times a week. And, I probably ride my mountain bike way more than I ride my dirt bike these days.
Did you ever get competitive with that, or has it always been just a hobby? And
yeah, just a hobby. Because when I started mountain biking was in the 90s, and I was racing moto. So I could never do both competition wise. All my old BMX friends that I had raced with when I was a little kid, a bunch of them became really successful mountain bike guys. So then I would get to go ride with these guys, and they were like now the pro mountain bike guys. So that part was really neat because I never lost touch with my buddies when I was a little kid, although I was racing moto and they were racing mountain bikes. So it's been a neat transition. And although I still love my dirt bike more than anything, and I get to go out, a couple times a month, 3 times, 4 times a month, whatever, once a week. But I can just pop out the back door and jump on the mountain bike.
That's the best thing about mountain bikes. It's so convenient. And I won't get into this now, but now I know who I'm going to ask. I have a couple questions about the crossover with like technique between dirt biking and mountain bikes. but I won't. I guess that's totally applicable. People would be interested in that. Do you think that a lot of the technique does cross over, like your stance and stuff, you know, while you're hinged at the hips with your head out in front of the bike and your elbows high when you're riding? Do you think that translates to mountain bike?
Yeah, totally. I think with suspension, unlike hardtail or BMX style stuff, but with suspension, you never want to fight it, right? You just want to let it go wherever it wants to go, and you kind of just ride it. Just like adventure bikes, right? Sometimes the big bikes, you're like out on a trail, like, holy shit, I'm not sure how to handle this, but you just got to let the bike go, and you just you don't fight it. You just let it go. And mountain bikes are a lot the same way. So it's totally applicable for sure. You know, the more you're tense, the more you're tight, the more you're doing that, the more you're fighting it, the worse off it's going to be, and you're going to wear yourself out. So yeah, as far as it goes, you just got to kind of let it do its thing, and you're along for the ride.
We have a couple questions here. So Jonas Salloway in the audience wants to know who your BMX sponsor, who was Showtime's BMX sponsor as a kid?
So I was sponsored by a company called VDC, and it was a guy named Boris Dixon, and he had a totally factory team. It wasn't like a GT or like a Redline or a whatever Hutch, some of the bigger ones. All my friends were kind of those guys, but I made it to right there, but not not where I was in Supercross or Motocross, but I was close. So I would say it was a factory team, but not one. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was one of the popular ones. I don't know. I was 10 years old, so it's
kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
So Simon Cudby, one more thing. Simon Cudby said to tell us about your signature GT BMX bike.
Yeah. So good question, Simon. When I started racing Supercross and started getting good, I was still riding BMX, and all the guys ride those really steep trails like BMX jumps and stuff. So I was really into that, even though I was racing Supercross. And some of the team managers really didn't like it at the time, because it was like, they thought they wanted me only riding Supercross, right? And I was like, look, you can't change who I am. I am me, right? I just got to do my stuff. I'll make sure I take care of, I'm not going to try and do it unsafely. So anyways, there's a guy named Big E that's really good friends with Simon. And he's a guy that, like, hey, he reached out. He's like, look, let's make a signature GT. And I think I've learned now, the funny story about that is they made a bunch of GTs and they made too many, right? So they're sitting on some overstock, and the idea came out like, hey, let's make a Jeremy McGrath GT. And GT used to give me bikes and all this stuff that I was riding. So I was riding GT BMX bikes. And then we came up with one that was the Showtime Jeremy McGrath model. And we put all my Moto sponsors. It was when I was riding Yamaha. So it was like 98, I think 99. And we put the sponsors on the back, the triangle on the back. And it was pretty successful. I think they sold out of them. They sold every one they had. So that was good. I was able to do my part on the marketing side of it.
Yeah, that's cool. Got to dig up a picture of that for sure. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Oh no, that's all right. Yeah, that's good. So the thing I'm really curious about, you had this incredible, so you had this BMX career, which, capped out at 15, and then you transition over to motorcycles, have this like insane career, like 72 Supercross wins. You got, there's books and movies, and I mean, you get online and put your name into the Google search bar. It's just incredible the stuff that comes out. It's like fucking. I believe me, I spent a couple hours today geeking out on it. It's like out of this world. It's really, really cool and inspiring. But and then so now I'm really curious, like what led you into ADV? Like what because of some of the things I said earlier about, like, it being like, it's not you must be a very competitive guy, like, obviously, right? So like, and this is like a very uncompetitive activity, like, right. And you must know a ton about performance and like little fine tuning suspension and engines, like little changes in gear and technique and everything. Whereas ADV is like, you can just sort of hop on any old thing and go do it, strap your bags to the back. Not that we don't have our opinions about bikes, obviously. But so how does a guy like Jeremy McGrath arrive at ADV,
Well, here's the thing. I think the part about jumping on anything and being relaxed about it is part of the beauty of it, right? Because all my life, I've had to be like laser focused and test and like just pick, things have to be so perfect. And, part of me likes to not be perfect, right? I mean, I just want to like, hey, let's hop on this, let's go. And I love the adventure. Like I love being out where nobody is. Like I love that part. And we've all had this feeling. And I know when you have many times during my professional career, I've had this thing where like, man, I just want to run away from life right now. I just want to go out somewhere where nobody is and just get away from all this stuff. So probably 10 or 12 years ago, I started riding Baja a lot. I started riding Baja a lot on Moto. So I know you guys spend a lot of time in Baja. It's one of my favorite spots, but I started riding with Cameron Steele and he introduced me to it. And, before that you had the stigma of like, oh, Baja is so dangerous, all this stuff. I started going down there with him, with the Desert Assassin guys and riding dirt bikes. And I was like, man, this is freaking amazing. Like Baja is like the most badass place I've ever been. Yeah. And so, I started doing that quite a lot, got really comfortable with being down there and all that stuff. And, it's that kind of sparked the interest, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I want to do this. You say it's not competitive, but listen, if you're on a KLR 650 and you're out there on a single track where you should be probably riding a 450, well, all of a sudden it's competitive against yourself in that trail. And so
it's challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. For me, I'm like, okay, can I make this trail on a KLR? That's that's where the challenge comes in. So, and a couple of my buddies have gotten into it. And like you said, it's kind of taken on this life of its own. And every little chance I get, I'm like, I got to get on this. I got to get on my KLR. I got to get out there. So, and then, I guess the biggest dream that any moto guys ever had is if our motocross bikes had a license plate, right?
Yeah.
So that is like the trail connector for what we live for. So that's where adventure comes in for me. It's like, look, now I have a bike. I can do all this stuff. I can hit all these trails, all these things that I've never been able to do. And I can connect it all with street.
It's so cool. I've seen in the last year. So Moscow has been in business for a few years now, and we haven't really had any like superstar, any racers like at all reaching out to us for gear until the last year. And it just seems like there's been this shift in like racers moving into ADV or trying it out, or like, I talked to Quinn Cody 2 KTM rallies ago, and he was like, yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna like do it. I'm gonna go sleep off my motorcycle. Like I'm gonna pack my shit and I'm gonna go like sleep. I'm gonna ride my bike and sleep on the trail. And I was like, yeah, dude, you should, of course. Like this is what we do. And so it's so cool. I mean, I just can't even tell you how awesome it is. And I was reading your Upshift back in issue 6 of Upshift when they interviewed you, and you said you wanted to get out to the mountains. Have you done that yet? Have you made your way out to the mountains? Have you been to the Northwest at all?
I have not done that, and I haven't slept off my bike yet. So I'm
dude, so much to look forward to.
You guys are so inspiring, because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do what they're doing. I'm going to figure out how to do that. And
Did
so
Jeremy McGrath just say that we're inspired. I'm like, oh my.
I see stuff. Oh, this is so fun. And so I'm working my way into that. Obviously I'm like a day tripping guy, or like if you have a point A to point B, you can spend the night and then kind of ride back. So I've done some of that. And obviously I'm dying to get to Baja, but look, I go to Baja on my dirt bike with Cameron. I go to Baja with my KRX 1000, my Cowie, side by side. We do 7-day trips. We do almost 2,000 miles in 7 days with these things. So next stop, I think my next one is going ADV from my house to Scorpion Bay to go surf.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
So I want to do that one. And I've stayed there. I've been there on the side by side. It's like one of the raddest spots ever. So I'm like, look, we can do that ride almost in one day. We'll go there.
So many different ways to get there too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options. You can go down one way, come back another.
Okay, we'll have to meet you in Baja sometime.
Totally. So where are you, when you're doing these side-by-side trips and these moto trips down there, like where are you staying on these trips? Like, are you staying at ranches or hotels or what?
Yeah. So what we normally do is we plan to we start in, say, Ensenada, and then we go different So we'll try and do like maybe 200, 150 to, depending on how, if we break or not. But we go with about 10 cars. We have a chase truck, and we probably do 150 miles a day. And then we try and stay in somewhere, because I go ride with probably 10 guys that are a little bit older than me that they're just on vacation all the time. So I'm like, perfect. They stay we try and stay in like the really cool spots, like hotels and different little spots along the way. But sometimes when we don't have a connector and we have such a long run, we sleep on the beach. So we've done that. The chase truck, we prop up our tent and all this stuff. We just sleep under the stars. It's amazing.
When I rode down to Panama from the States like 6 or 7 years ago. And the very beginning of the trip, I met up with some friends of friends in San Diego that are like longtime Baja, dirt bike racer guys. And they had a chase vehicle, and they were like, dude, we're going down to Mike's tomorrow, Mike's Sky Ranch. Why don't you just do the first leg of the trip with us? And I didn't know it was a group of guys. I only knew one of them. And it was like family thing. It's a tradition. It was the coolest thing. It was really cool. And so I threw my gear. I had a 950 Super Enduro. I threw all my bags. This is before we started Moscow. I threw my bags in their chase vehicle, and I sort of rode with them. They were on their dirt bikes. I was on this massive adventure bike, and they're all looking at me like I'm like an alien. Like, who the hell needs a 950cc bike? And what is all this shit that you have strapped to it? And because I'm just this stranger. I only knew one of the guys. And we get down there, and they were all just wonderful dudes. And we get down to Mike's, and we spend that night just drinking and having steaks and stuff. It was really nice. Met everyone, bonded. And so the next morning I woke up and I pulled all my stuff out of the chase vehicle, and I was setting up my bike out there by the swimming pool at Mike's, and all those guys were like gathering around, and they're like, wait, what? Where are you going? I was like, I'm going to Panama. And they're like, wait, because they're all going home the next day. They're riding back from Mike's. I'm like, I'm going, this is the beginning. I'm on the road for 3 months. I'm living off this thing. And they were like, oh, you can see like little light bulbs going off. Like, oh, I get it. That's why you have such a big bike,
Yeah. No, that's how fun's that run too. Going to Mike's is so fun.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think, any guys like Quinn Cody and just guys that are a little bit through their career a little bit, they're onto this. They're totally onto the ADV, because they're like, look, we love our bikes so much. What can we do? What's the next thing? So we're trying to experience, whether it's not, not quite up to Panama yet, but trying to experience these, 5-day trips, 3-day trips, different destinations. And that's the cool thing with ADV is you're not limited. You can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have to stop, you just keep going, and you just sleep wherever you want. What, I sometimes when I think about motorcycle, like the motorcycle business industry, like the dirt bike stuff, I feel like it's like, there's so much of the emphasis on racing. Like earlier you talked about like the racing and then kind of the free ride stuff you were doing on your own that wasn't getting the publicity. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, I feel like that you've seen this like free ride movement happen in skiing, which is kind of similar, like where there you have like racing and then the free ride, and suddenly the free ride now is huge, like, and backcountry and all that's happened in our lifetime. Do you think something like that could happen in motorcycles?
Well, that's funny that you say that, because, those like in snowboarding and skiing, like the free ride contests are starting to happen. There's one that's coming out now that's like I don't know if it's Sage Kotzenberg or one of those guys that's super. They're going to have that contest on natural terrain, right? So that's kind of what I think every athlete, when they go through, when they have these boundaries, right, for so long, and then they're looking for that next thing, whatever it is, whether it's free riding, motocross. Here's the thing with Supercross and motocross, you get too far outside the boundaries, there's no money, right? So these guys are, the reason why it's happening the way it's happening is because they know that they need to go make money. So they need to race, be good at it, make money. When they're done with that, then they can go explore the rest of their passion. And I think that, we're in the 90s, in the big movement of freestyle, there was guys that could make money. Travis Pastrana is an example of that, right?
Yeah, right.
He lives his passion. That guy is so awesome. He was a great motocross racer, but he's a little too, just a little too wild to maybe just keep it in those boundaries and try and be a racer all the time. And that's where, the Nitro Circus comes from and all this crazy stuff he does. He's been able to create his own venue, his own job, his own workspace.
Right.
Now, the other guys, some of the other freestyle motocross guys, they did well, they made some money, but now freestyle motocross has kind of hit like a low. There's not, it's kind of the same stuff over and over. And for me, that's the beauty of racing, right? The beauty of racing is we have a starting gate and we have a checkered flag. Mm-hmm. You never know what's going to happen. No matter if you think you still never know. And that's why racing is so intriguing. And that's why I think, whatever discipline these guys are that are riding two wheels, they get their work stuff out of the way. And then they're like, okay, now let's go play. Let's go ADV. Let's go point A to point B. Let's go camp on the road somewhere, whatever. And I think that's why you end up seeing that is, some of the guys never quite make the career of it because they just get too distracted and want to do everything. And I think the guys we know about that are more famous, are the guys that kind of just, you got to stay focused. You got to stay laser focused until that part of it's done. And then you can kind of move on to something else.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't really have, our ADV doesn't really have sponsorships. We don't really have professional athletes and it's something that, we get requests. We're getting requests more and more from people that, like for us, a sponsorship means like a discount on gear or maybe free gear, and it doesn't usually involve any kind of compensation. And probably for the reasons you said, there's just not a lot of money in this sport. But we do get what we're starting to get more and more of is like independent travelers who have their own audience, like they have an Instagram following or they have a Facebook or they have some way that people are following their trip and they're trying to support their travels. And they sort of left home with a chunk of cash. The cash has been diminishing and now they're off somewhere in the world. And they're like, hey, if I could get, a small amount of money from 2 or 3 companies every month in the developing world, I could support myself on that. And they are becoming a little bit like our sponsored athletes, but the numbers are very, very small.
Right.
And how does it work in racing? Like obviously most people making a go of it in racing don't accomplish the results that you accomplish. What does it look like for someone trying to get a sponsorship and stuff like that in racing? I mean, how are the economics?
Yeah, I think the landscape of racing is, sort of the same as the guy that's, when you're starting to come up, you're starting to get sponsors. First is product, maybe it's a discount, then it's product, then it's a little bit of money, mm-hmm. Then maybe you get a team ride or something. Then maybe you're fortunate enough to get a little salary. When I consider that I made it to the pro ranks and I got my first team deal was $35,000. So I was a kid and, at 19 years old, you're like $35,000. I'm like, I made it. This is killer. Yeah. So, obviously as a little, someone with no overhead, no responsibilities and nothing, like that's fine. Right. And so, as it ramps up, you start doing deals. And if you've done well enough, your contracts go up a little bit. And then at the end, it's the same way, right? So when you start to fizzle a little bit, your contracts start going down and down and down. And then, if you've done well for like I'm super fortunate to be able to work in the industry still because it's mostly because of my results that I've had in the past. Obviously, I like to say that I have a lot of great relationships and I could go to anyone that I ever was sponsored by and talk to them and probably be an ambassador for them. So that was one of the things that I cherish the most because I've made a lot of great relationships and the sports provided a lot for me, right? And my family. The way adventure, you guys, I think are fortunate because like the guys that want to get involved in what you guys are doing are guys that are successful people. So they're like, okay, cool. I want to do this stuff and I can afford to do it now because I have the time. Mm-hmm. And that part is a really good thing for not only you guys, but just the industry in general as the ADV, right? Because bikes are big bucks, stuff for them is big bucks. And it's like, look, it's guys looking for crazy, cool adventures. Mm-hmm. And then you have the hardcores, like the guy you're talking about, the ambassador type, that would be like, hey, I'm going to Panama, I'm going to Chile, I'm going to Costa Rica, I'm going to wherever, and I'm going to document this whole thing. And that stuff, even for me, is so new, right? Because in my racing career in the 90s, there was no documentation of all this stuff. We had ESPN maybe at midnight on a Saturday night, like nobody watched it. They had VCRs and all that. So it's a totally different landscape today, which is exactly what we were talking about in the pre-show. Kind of like I'm trying to catch up and learn and all this stuff. So it's so crazy how it's all changing.
Something just clicked for me though with this, like why sponsorship or like who to support, or when people ask for free gear, why it's so difficult sometimes in our sphere. And I think it's because like with racing, it's kind of cut and dry. Like you sponsor the winners, you know, it's like, but there's no main stage for fucking adventure riding. It's like, we're all just out doing, and everybody is doing an epic trip. Like I can't tell you how many emails we get every week of like, hey, I'm this guy and I'm doing this trip, and not to discount how cool the trips are. The trips are great, but like everybody's doing
like, that's our business. We equip people to do cool trips. So it's like, if we sponsored everybody that did a cool trip, like we would have no business.
It's interesting.
You know? Well, that's the funny thing. I'm going through the same thing right now with our supplement brand. So we launched a supplement brand about almost 9 months ago, ARMA supplements, and it's the same thing. Like it's, you know, you guys have great product. We have great supplements. We know they work. We don't have to give it away, but we want some of it away to, and then, okay, now who do we give it away to? Because there's so many people wanting it and using it. I guess it's probably a good problem to have for both of us, right? Because
that's true. Yeah, at least people are interested.
Anybody listening, I just pasted the link to ARMA so that you can check out the website and look at their supplements. I'm looking forward to trying some of it myself. I was looking at it earlier this week. So just a couple of housekeeping things before I paste the Zoom link for other people to join us. I think it's about that time. So number one, everybody watching, if you do join and we have like audio or video issues or whatever, no offense, but we're just going to put you back in the waiting room. We don't have time to deal with that. So, and then if you come on, just try to keep it to like one question or so. We don't want to let any one person stick around for too long. We want a few different people to get to join us. And then one other thing, sorry. So I'm kind of moderating the chat as we're going here. And there was a guy kind of giving us hell a little bit about a little off topic, but where we manufacture, if we manufacture overseas. And he was saying that I was answering a lot of the silly questions here in the chat, but not his. It's just not the time and place for us to answer that. We manufacture overseas. We don't hide that at all over the world. So I gave my email address in the chat. Hit me up with an email and I'll follow up with you, dude.
So Jeremy, while Ash is getting that set up, I would love to hear, so it's interesting because your racing career, spectacular, but like so far from, like, I can't even imagine, you know, whereas like now your post-racing career is much more relatable to me and inspiring. So could you, how did you get from that, what you were from that kind of like, tell us about this nutritional supplement business. How did you get into this business? How did you learn about it? How did you start it? Why did you pick this? Like, you know?
Well, here's the thing, like, throughout my career, you know, you get hit up from different people on investments and all this stuff. Right. So, a friend of mine, Scott Sipkovic, is a guy that really was very instrumental in building Monster. And I've been a Monster athlete for a lot of years. You know, he's had this idea like, hey, we want to do something. And so is like, look, I want to do something with you. Let's do it. And ARMA came up, and I just, you know, when you're racing and you're in the middle of all that stuff and you never feel like you have enough time to really focus on, you know, knowing what I know now, I should have never done some of the investments, right? Because I wasn't in charge, right? And you can only control your own destiny if you're part of the team. And so you all you can do is roll the dice on some of that stuff. And I've been part of some good ones, part of some bad ones. And this one was more like, hey, I only want to be part of this team if I'm owner. And so I came on as owner. And so I've really taken a particular interest in supplements. Obviously I'm into supplements because I work out. I'm always riding. I'm always trying to figure out what the next best thing. And I'm always around athletes. Right. So it's like, you know, we kind of chose this path and we're like, look, let's see if we can make a difference. And we have guys like Adam Cincerello using our stuff. We have Chad Reed using our stuff. And, you know, we're just trying to, the supplement world's a big business. There's a lot of choices out there. And I think that through our connections, through our business partners, there's 4 of us, we really can make a difference. So it was something that interests me mostly because I could be owned. I was done being investor guy, which I get hit all the time. And some have been good, some have been bad, but you know, this kind of piqued my interest mostly because I could be owner. So, and it's been fun. I've been an ambassador in the sport of motocross for a lot of years. It's been great. And I love working with Kawasaki and developed some great tires with Maxxis. Maxxis is one of my, favorite partners. It's really just Kawasaki and Maxxis these days. And a lot of other small stuff. Maxxis has been great with the side-by-side stuff. So since I'm in the 4-wheel world and I'm in the 2-wheel world, it kind of works. And this new venture with ARMA has been awesome. So that's kind of where that came from. But obviously,
it's so hard to choose questions. I have so many questions to ask you. I'm like, and we have someone here in the waiting room that I think we'll let him join and see what he's got to say. One sec.
Stuff. So since I'm in the 4-wheel world and I'm in the 2-wheel world, it kind of works.
There you go.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Hey. What's up? I heard a rumor you were going to be on here tonight, so I tuned in.
I'm glad. What's up, Simon?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really good. Yeah, just trying to stay, away from people mostly. But yeah, kids are good and Kim's good, so I'm good.
That's awesome.
So
well, sorry we missed you.
From Upshift. Yeah, from Upshift.
Yeah, hi, Pete and Ashley. How are you?
Hi,
nice to see you as always.
Yeah. Well, sorry we missed you. We did a great ride a couple months ago with TC, with Todd Corbett and those guys, and we thought you were going to be able to make it, but sorry we missed you on that one.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry I missed it too, but I'm hoping you guys are going to do it again. I hope it was awesome. You're going to do it again, and then I can finally make it.
Yeah,
I feel like what we learned tonight was that Jeremy McGrath's never camped off a motorcycle. Yeah, I feel like there has to be the mission of Upshift in Moscow to change that.
We got to get Jeremy out to the Unrally, Simon.
That'd be great.
The truth or what?
Yeah, he could do some pretty long wheelies down that lake bed, that's for sure.
Oh, fuck yeah, that would be so awesome.
Oh man, I'm still dying to get up where Simon's at now. I want to ride the Sawtooth. So I've seen this guy named Bill Dart work for the AMA. He used to send me these photos the most beautiful photos I've ever seen in my life of a single track.
Yeah. And
I think it's up in Idaho where the Sawtooths are. And I'm like, you know what? I got to get there. And unfortunately I missed the ride with Simon. But I'm, it's on the bucket list for sure. It is, Simon.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's going to be good. I mean, not name dropping, but I think we've known each other since about 94. And that was when I used to work for GT, and I shot you with that BMX bike you were talking about with Big E, and we'd always watch you at Supercross, and your technique was so good, and me and Big E always thought it was because you used to race BMX, and your timing and everything was so good.
I think it probably might have had something to do with it. I was saying earlier today, the funny thing about me racing motocross is, when I was a kid and started racing motocross, I only wanted to do enough in motocross so I could finally get to a stadium and race Supercross, because I had a practice track in my yard that was all Supercross. And I was trying to figure that out today. I'm like, why in the world did I have a Supercross track when I probably should have been trying to be better at motocross? So fortunately it worked out. But, I was saying to someone earlier today that it took me until I was about probably 22, 23 years old to figure out how to ride a motocross track properly. Of course, I had the Supercross thing down, and that was probably because of a lot of the BMX. But one of those things where it was like, I don't know what I was thinking back then, but I guess, whatever happened, it worked out. It worked out fine.
Dude, we can teach you. I'll teach you about camping off your motorcycle. You got to teach me what the difference between a motocross and a Supercross track is. I'm like, I don't even know.
I got you covered on that. We'll figure it out.
Okay, good.
It's quite a difference.
I would love to say that the thought of like flying through the air on a motorcycle, like I don't give a shit about it, or that I don't care about doing wheelies, or I don't care about any of that stuff, but I do. Like everybody cares about that. Everyone wants to do it.
Guess what? A lot more hairy when you're on a big bike.
So yeah,
totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The jumps are always fine. It's just whether you can land it, right?
Jeremy, do you think that, one of the reasons ADV is growing so quickly right now is people are migrating into it from other places. We've got people coming in from road bikes, from cruiser bikes. We've got people coming in from sport bikes, and actually a lot of those segments are having challenges. But there are people also coming in from dirt bikes. So people usually come to ADV either from the road bike side and they're just learning dirt for the first time, or they come from the dirt bike side and say, wouldn't it be cool to continue instead of looping back to my car and camp? I mean, do you see that from your vantage point in the, like, firmly in the dirt side of things? Are you seeing other riders like asking about ADV or curious about ADV? What's your take on that?
I'm seeing it a lot more. I mean, Grant Langston, who's a former motocross champ, I know he's super into it because he rides with a buddy of mine named Dan. I think what's gotten better for all of us is the manufacturers are starting to pay more attention to it, right?
Yeah.
So we all have more options, right? I know, there's probably 6, 8, at least 8 bikes you could probably choose from that are really good for ADV. And, that's a good sign for all of us. I think the customer is looking for something else. And thank goodness the manufacturers are listening.
Yeah, it's pretty much I used to say every major manufacturer except Harley Davidson, and now it's every major manufacturer, including Harley Davidson, is making an adventure bike. And that's all happened really, it used to be just BMW and KTM. Obviously some of the Japanese brands have some long-standing models as well, but in terms of like the big adventure bikes, I went, do you know the Desert 100 race? Have you heard of that in Eastern Washington?
I haven't heard of that.
It's a big race. It's actually one of the largest off-road races in North America right now. But it's been around forever, like 50 years. It's a 50-mile course, and it's on private property in Eastern Washington. But it gets about 5,000 people. And I went out there when we first started the business, and set up a booth, and I had tents. We were working with MSR then, and we were starting to sell some luggage. And people just thought they didn't get it at all. Like we're selling bags that go on a bike, and they're like, why in the world would I put a bag on the bike? And then I had tents there also, and they were like, why would I take a tent on a bike? And they're like, is that in case I break down out there or something like that, And yet one of the number one things we see at the events we do in the dual sport and adventure space now is people who have a dirt bike background, saying, oh, this is cool, I can travel on this thing, And so
I think it's one of those things where you have to experience it maybe once to go like, it kind of has to spark your interest a little bit. I think if you have, let's just face it. I think anyone that rides 2 wheels, whether it's Supercross, Motocross, flat track, they're all kind of, their interest is there in doing anything related to motorcycles. So, it's funny because, I'm going to go ahead, like say it, like 10, 12 years ago, I was like, why would I ever need a BMW 1200? Like, what is that for?
Yeah, so you can ride around on gravel roads. Sounds boring.
Yeah, now looking back, you're like, wow, they were forward thinking, right? So and then then I went to Erzberg Enduro in 2006. I rode a Honda 250, and I rode with Cyril Deport and a bunch of these guys that were like David Knight and all these guys. But I think one of the guys there's a prologue that he did it on the 950 Enduro KTM, and I was like, why is he riding this bike? I mean, the thing had probably 75 horsepower. I think it was ripping.
Sometimes the game, it seems in the ADV world or dual sport world, the game gets to be like, what's the most ridiculous machine that I can take on this trail? Like you were saying, Jeremy, like, can I take a KLR? Hey, Simon, do you want to ask the question that we were discussing this morning, the Cowie question?
Oh yeah, we had a question. We were talking about, Cowie, the KLR is, a bike that's been around for a long time. It's kind of like the Suzuki DR650. You have people traveling all over the world on these bikes because they're kind of legendary bikes. They never break down. They just go forever. But now that Cowie's sort of discontinued that bike, do you know when they're going to come out with another legit adventure bike, or even a street legal 500, for example?
The word on the street is that the KLR has only been discontinued because they're going to revamp the whole thing. So I think it's going to be possibly 1 season out. So I think they're doing probably a lot of testing on whatever the newest version of that bike is going to be. Obviously, you know, a few years ago they had to update it with the fairing and they changed some of that stuff. You know, it's a bike that's been around for a long time, but you know, the funny thing about that is the KLR is Kawasaki's #1 selling bike. So
Really?
that's a wild stat when you think about that. I mean, a lot of people have a KLR.
It's such an approachable dual sport for people looking for their first dual sport bike. At the price point has always been in the reliability, and it's pretty much like a go anywhere, do anything machine. You know, like you said, you can
track it, which is
okay.
so you can single track it, which is a great. You know, like look, there's a lot of big bad super enduros and all this stuff that are awesome, but you're not riding single track on that bike.
Yeah.
So, you know, anyone that actually loves to get out and get on a single track somewhere, you can't ride a GS 1200. You can't ride a super enduro. You can't ride these massive bikes. You know, so you have to ride some happy medium. Like that's where say the BMW GS 800, it seems like everyone went super big, but now they're all kind of coming back a little bit, which is a more versatile bike, which I see. So
I gotta say, I don't know if you've ridden the 800 yet, and no offense to anyone who likes the 800, but that thing is like riding a Hoover vacuum cleaner to me. I can't, that's like my least favorite, the 7 and 800. Again, I'm not like bashing anyone who rides one, just not my bike. But yeah, they're the sort of in between bikes. I totally agree that going more towards like a more capable machine on single track makes a lot of sense. That's why there tends to be this trend of like people buy the big bike and then they end up like shifting to smaller and smaller, and the whole industry is kind of moving that way right now, like seeing if we can dual sport or adventurize smaller bikes, you know, because it's
kind of like what is the perfect bike, and that's what Honda came out with, that new 450X or whatever that thing is.
450X.
L, it's like an L, right? It's a street legal dirt bike basically. And then you got to bridge the gap between the GS 800, which is a dog, but you got to figure out, okay, like I want something more than a dirt bike, but I don't want something like a 950 that I can't trail. So it's they're trying. I think the industry itself is trying to find a balance.
Yeah. We did that trip. Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that they're one of the things I've observed is that, you know, I mean, essentially we're watching a newish sport. We're watching a sport be sort of created right in front of our eyes, which is really cool to observe. But in the time I've been doing it, even before getting into the industry, it seems like a lot of people came in around the same time and they're progressing with the sport. Their skill levels are improving, and there tends to be this like progression of like, oh, I'm going to do kind of gravel roads and pavement, and then just a little rough terrain to get to a campsite. And then slowly the dirt starts to be the thing that they like more. And so they want to push a little further, go a little more challenging. And eventually that leads them to like, okay, now we're all dirt. Now we're all Jeep track. Oh, now we're pushing off the Jeep track into these other areas. And then the bike tends to get smaller. The riding style is more athletic. And so I think that that's happening to the whole sport, you know? And so it's like this mouse, like moving through a snake, that all these people came in at the same time and they're all riding the same curve, like in the same way skiers, like, they start on the green trails, then the blue trails, then the black trails. That's happening with the sport, and the bikes are evolving to kind of keep pace with that, you know.
Well, I think honestly in the ADV, you know, sport part of it, you know, we're lucky because KTM, Husqvarna, potentially BMW, those companies are able to make moves quick, right? So they come out with so many new bikes, like in 3-4 years, and then they're able to move around quickly and move back. With the Japanese company, it takes a little longer to get that wheel going, and you know, take some time to sort of think about it, test it, figure out what, you know, they do a lot more thinking than they do designing and making. It seems like it takes a lot longer. Not so much in the dirt bike world, but when you're having a side project bike like an adventure bike or something, so it takes a little longer. I'm really psyched that Kawasaki is going to put out a new KLR. That's going to be cool, but I'm having a lot of fun with the one I have. You know, it's not the fastest bike out there, but you can trail the thing really good. I got knobbies on it. John Anderson from W made me some wheels. I got some crash bars. I blacked the whole thing out. Like, I'm having a blast with the thing. It's cool.
That's cool. Sick. Hey, Simon, it was great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks
and
very
we'll
much.
see you back on the live stream, in a week or two? 2 weeks?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, great to
Cool.
see you.
Good to see you, Simon.
MC, take it easy.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Always good to see you, Simon.
Yeah,
take care.
Take care.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, we've got a few. Jeremy, is it cool if we go over a little bit, like maybe 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go.
You're like, sorry, I guess it's kind of awkward. Can't put you on the spot like that. Okay.
No.
We'll have a couple more people. I thought Simon, though, we took a little longer on that one, obviously, because we know Simon.
Hey, Pete.
Looks like his audio is connecting. Man, I was just saying earlier today, like, I don't know if I don't think we talked about this, Jeremy, but I lost my little brother a couple of years ago, and he was a big Supercross fan. And he would just be like losing his shit today. I mean, he would have wanted to be on the live stream with us the whole time. I was like, oh man, I'm sure he's like, Pete, it looks like we're having trouble with your audio, dude.
Sorry, man. Bye.
Sorry. Bye.
Yeah, well, that would have been fun to have him on if he's a Supercross fan. That would have been.
Dude, totally. Yeah, we didn't get to talk about, I had so many things. We didn't get to talk about your family either. I really want to ask you, your wife just sounds like a total badass, man. I mean, I love her Instagram, like tagline, her bio says, I like things in twos, 2 girls, 2-time cancer survivor, and number 2. That's your number.
Yeah. She is she's an inspiration to all of us.
Oh man, totally.
It's like, wow, she had the unlucky number, and then she's pulled out of it. So it's amazing. And it's funny because on the way here, we're in Arizona right now, but on the way here, she told me, and this was news to me, that she told me that she was like off all her medication, and that was the first I'd heard. So it's exciting. She's doing well. She had a bone marrow transplant almost 8 years ago now.
I watched the video where she got to meet Daniel. Was that his name, Daniel?
Yeah, she was
a
donor.
Paul.
Hi, Paul. Connected. What's up, man?
Paul, Jeremy, Paul. This is our buddy Paul.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Hey,
I got to.
Sorry, Paul, before you start, I want to tell Jeremy a little bit about you. So Paul just kind of came home on a break from around the world tour. He was on the road for what, like a year and a half, Paul, through like 40 plus countries?
43 countries,
43
about
countries.
2.5 years.
Yeah, cool. So
that is impressive. Wow.
It's an incredible trip, man. Yeah, it was pretty
We don't have enough time to hear all your great stories, Paul.
no.
We can go on for a while. Ash, by the way, congratulations on your solo ride.
Dude, thank you. Yeah, thanks. That was like unexpected, but pretty awesome. Yeah, that was my hero's journey moment, right? Like, am I going to continue off on my own, or am I going to go with Pete and his broken leg? I'm going to go on my own.
Jeremy, I don't know. We just got back from a trip where I in Southeast Asia, I broke my leg there just in February. And so I had to peel off the trip and go to the hospital, and Ashley continued riding.
Of course, I asked
3
him
weeks
if
on her
he
own.
wanted me to stay, but he didn't want me to stay.
Clearly he did, but he was like, you got to go.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's like, are you kidding me? You have to go. You gotta go. So thanks, Paul.
Yes. Yeah, so you started out now in ADV, and you've been hitting Baja, and I'm pretty sure you're not too recognized down there. You're kind of anonymous, and you get to like go to local places and stuff like that. Do you prefer than being recognized than like riding around America?
You know, the funny thing is that the beauty of my career is I've gotten to wear my helmet the whole time, right? When I'm obviously Baja, there's certain spots I can go that were, you know, and if the Baja race is coming up and we're riding the track or doing the pre-running on some of the stuff, people recognize me at times, but like I go down there and I wear a black helmet, I black out. So like, I don't want to know anything. So yeah, I don't, even around America. I mean, look, I'm 48, right? So I'm almost two generations now removed from Supercross. There's like a crew that came in after me, and they're all retired. So there's another bunch of young guys that came in now. So if I'm in a race town somewhere, people know.
Okay.
If I'm going out and stuff like that, or if I'm at the track. But generally in the regular day life stuff, wherever I'm at, most people don't recognize. You'll have the one-offs guys are like, hey, are you Jeremy McGrath, whatever. So I still get some of it, but fortunately through my career I got to wear a helmet, right? So when I'm not you know, if people weren't watching TV all the time, they may have heard the name. If I say the name or someone says my name, then people are like, it kind of like sparks a little bit like, what, did I hear that? But for the most part, I can cruise around and be normal guy. And that I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah.
And as for cruising around, you got any plans on going further? Maybe Asia, Africa, doing a long trip, maybe something camping involved and cooking.
I'm so glad you asked that, Paul. I had the same question. I was like, is he thinking about international
I had the same
yet?
question too. That's funny. We were all
Listen, here's my problem. I have 2 kids, and that, you know, like I have a regular life and I have to be at home for. Obviously, I still get those feelings where I'm like, hey, I need to go somewhere. And we do a trip in Baja every November. It's a 7-day trip. I go out on my own on that one. And you know, typically it's been a side-by-side, but the guy that arranges that, he rides an adventure bike too. So he's done the whole Alaska trip up to, you know, like the road that those guys run all the way up top like that, loop back around through Canada, then hit up a motocross national on the way back home. And I was like so mad that I didn't hit that up with him. But, you know, there's no immediate plans at the moment to go. As my kids get older and get more involved in sports and more involved in like not needing their dad around, then obviously, you know, then I kind of start thinking, okay, what can I plan or what can I do? So it's in the future. I just don't have any right now.
Well, it sounds like the seed is planted to just see where it grows from there.
Definitely.
Once the culture of those people get into your blood from the adventure, it just gets deeper and deeper, and then you check out. There's nothing else you think about for a while.
Is that where you're at right now, Paul?
I'm jonesing, man. I'm telling you. The bike's in Portugal. I never made it to Cambodia. And, you know, maybe save up for another year and then I'll be able to finish that ride.
Yeah. So Paul's in that post, you know, one of the things I think when you go on these trips, it's like, it's so stimulating. It's one of the things that maybe is relatable, you know, really between ADV and racing. Like when you're arriving in a new country where you don't speak the language, you have no fucking idea where you're going to sleep. But like, you're just totally, I mean, you're out there, man. And it's like, you can't, you know, different characters on the road signs. And it's like crazy. It's so stimulating, right? Like every day is different from the day before. It's like, you just get your adrenaline going. And then when you come back from one of these trips, it's like, whoa, man, how do I deal, you know, with like,
right. Or how do I get back to that? Like,
how do I get back? Yeah.
I mean, this time last year, I was going through a Bosnian minefield, and now I'm working at UPS.
Hey, Paul, I have a question really quick. So in the chat, there are a lot of people talking about BDRs. Paul, have you done a BDR yourself?
I did a little with Dusty in Colorado.
Okay. And Jeremy, you know what the backcountry discovery routes are, right?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay, great. This is awesome. I'm so glad. Thanks. I think Ron Bro has been bringing this up, and then a couple of other people. So BDR stands for Backcountry Discovery Route. And I would say that the BDR is probably responsible for more growth and more of the spotlight being on adventure and dual sport riding than anything probably in the last 10 years. So it's the backcountry discovery routes have a route from south to north or north to south that are primarily off-road with accommodations or gas stops like every 80 or so miles along the way so that you're not like totally stuck out there. But it started kind of on the West Coast and it's moving now all over the country. It's like
everyone can share, like people post their routes, and
it's mainly what they do is it used to be if you were like, we all know our own backyard really well, like, right, we know where to go riding and stuff like that. But then if you're like, shit, I want to go do something else, I want to go to Colorado, I want to go to Nevada, I want to go to California, you pull out your map, but you keep ending up on like dead end logging roads
or
and
you're
private
on somebody's property. Yeah.
So they've mapped these off-road routes that, you know, like just in, you know, you can go like 700 miles just in Oregon, all on dirt, you know?
Okay. So the upshift guys are like, okay, we're doing it. We're going to Idaho. Jeremy, you're coming up here. We're going to do the BDR together. All of us.
I'm in. I want to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So the BDR, like, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, but it's really amazing because they work with the landowners as well. And they help educate the riding community that like, hey guys, don't be an asshole. Like we got to take care of this stuff. Don't go throwing your trash or like shitting off the road and not burying your poop. Like you need to like, you know, take care of it. Like,
or the thing, like you get off gate, close gate, the whole thing. You like,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so it's really awesome. And now, you know, God, I don't even know. I don't have all my statistics right, but there's Idaho, California, Washington. They're working on Oregon. There's a Northeast BDR, a Mid-Atlantic BDR. It's really
Arizona,
amazing.
New
Arizona,
Mexico.
New Mexico. It's really, really cool. And you can kind of link them together too. And you can just do certain sections. Yeah, it's amazing. And the maps and stuff are free. It's all just like public knowledge, public information.
So it's made the sport a lot more accessible, because for new riders getting into it, that was like one of the things they would really trip over, like the navigation and like, where do I go? You know, you sort of get the bike and you get all the stuff and you're like, shit, now where do I go? You know, and the BDRs is like, boom, you have this thing, and they've chosen the routes, like they've found the interesting ones. So you don't get stuck on these, like, I mean, of course, any like cross state or cross country trip is going to have some boring bits, like you're connecting these really interesting little gems.
The BDR is watching. They have 10. They're watching right now. They're
cool.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Ina or Paul or who's on there, but they just chimed in the live chat, and there are 10 BDRs. I got to get my shit together. I don't know. I'm embarrassed now that I didn't realize.
Well, it sounds like we need to hit one of those up for sure. I'm excited.
Yeah, we do.
For sure. Hey, Paul, it was great to see you. We're going to let
Paul.
one more person join before we sign off. We'll talk to you.
Paul. Take care, buddy.
Dude, Jeremy, I'm so honored that you did this. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's really cool.
No, it's been super fun. I'm enjoying the chat. It's awesome.
Yeah,
cool, man.
Me too. I get so excited when, oh, shoot. Oh, what did I just do? Oh, no. I just kicked Jeremy out of the live stream on accident.
Whoops.
Oops, sorry.
Hey, thanks. See you later.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I think that I thought that was that it was someone else in there. Cool. Well, it looks like we're about 10 minutes over 8 o'clock, so we can probably sign off now.
Yeah.
That was so amazing.
Jeremy.
Guys, it's been great. I'm so stoked, and like, thank you for helping me with my stuff. I'm super on to what you guys are doing too, so I appreciate it, and it's inspiring for sure. And I look forward to when we're going to ride, because we are going to ride soon. We are going to ride. And I do have one question that I just remembered. Someone asked in the live stream related to Moscow. Is there anything that you can think of that you've been like while you're out adventure riding now that you were sort of longing for gear wise? Or do you have any, do you have any like gear suggestions for us? My bike is so like hooked up with like your guys' gear is so sweet. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what I need to put in it. Okay, cool. Like, cause I'm, you know, I'm a day trip guy and I've done some stuff, but I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out what I need to put in this bag. So we did one 2 weeks ago, and I put fuel in one cause I wasn't sure where we were actually going. So I put a couple bottles of fuel, and then I put food in the other side. And I was like, this is all stuff that's it's not for that. It's for sleeping bags and some more cool stuff. So I'm actually learning my way around Moscow too. My bikes look super sick, so I'm stoked on that. So thank you. But yeah, you know, I'm kind of learning as we go too. We're gonna take you camping on a bike, man. Yeah, we are. Yeah, for sure. It's gonna happen. See you, Jeremy. Thanks so much. Guys. See you, Pete. Bye. Ashley. See you. Bye. See you, Jeremy. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.